Everybody. Humor me. What's today?
Hump day.
Thank you. Hump day. This seems to be, and welcome to everyone who's streaming online. The unemployment insurance seems to be a very lively topic recently. In my experience, the Unemployment Insurance Board and the EDD Appeals Board, they have up and downs, you know, where they do things a certain way and then it changes and then it goes back the other way. Right now we're in a all employers lose phase when it comes to unemployment. And I don't know why it changed. There was nothing in particular. There was no mandate. We just started seeing it all of a sudden. So over the last 6 months, I've been paying pretty close attention to the rulings that come back and the reasons that clients are losing EDD claims and EDD appeals, legitimate ones where the person should not have been entitled to unemployment. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing, and I tell everyone this, I know it's hard to stomach, but you've got to remember that there is a presumption that all employees are entitled to unemployment benefits when they leave a job. That's the general rule. The being disqualified from benefits is the exception to the rule. And so the burden is already on the employer to demonstrate that one of the limited exceptions should apply in a particular case. So if 80% of the people that leave your employee get unemployment benefits, that's probably pretty normal. Even a little bit higher right now. That's normal, because that's what the system was intended to do, a short-term wage replacement statute, and that's what it does. It is financed by employers. The tax rate varies depending on the amount of UI benefits paid to former employees. One of the areas where I think there might be some lost opportunity is when an employee is disqualified from benefits, they get another job, they work there for a while, and then they are qualified, and there's a look-back period, there's a 12-month, and you get a notice saying your account's going to be charged for an employee that was originally not qualified. I have yet to get a straight answer from the EDD on whether or not, if you're ineligible and you become eligible again, if an employer in the look-back period for which you were ineligible, you have, can they be charged for it? I dispute those all the time. We'll send that in and say, wait a minute, here's the ruling. This person was disqualified from benefits when they left our employ. Sometimes they don't charge your account, sometimes they do. So I would do that as a matter of course. When you get that and you say, oh, who is this person? Oh, they were here 6 months ago. Wait a minute, you look back, they were disqualified. Send that back, the EDD, with the notice of disqualification. If I ever find out what the actual answer is, I'll let you know. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure to keep claims down. And I will tell you that I am absolutely convinced that controlling unemployment costs starts upon hiring. That's really, by the time we get to the end and I'm on the phone with a client and they're saying, well, we don't want them to get benefits. You're already out of luck if they're going to get them. There are so many things that you have to do starting way back when, and it starts with hiring the right person, checking references and whatnot, and we'll talk about that too. Employee is usually eligible for the following reasons. If they're laid off, lack of work. Voluntarily quit for good cause. We see this one all the time. Person's been given performance evaluations, negative feedback, they're on a final warning, all this stuff, and you get that notice back in the mail and it says, I quit because of the horrible, hostile environment and sexual harassment. Okay, that always comes up, and it's the first time we've heard of it. So what has happened is the employees quit, realize, uh-oh, I'm not going to get unemployment benefits, so they have to go find out what's one of the exceptions. Well, I quit, but I had a good reason to quit. Lesson there, make sure, if you can, get someone who quits to sign something and tell them, just for tracking purposes, for retention purposes, can you put the reason that you're quitting? And if they say, don't like job, not very good at it, about to get fired, then that's probably going to hold up when they come back later and tell you and claim something different. If they're leaving temporary or part-time work for full-time, and this is a little strange because why would they get unemployment if they're getting full-time? And sometimes I've seen it where there's a gap. Maybe when their hiring date is a little bit further, there's some relocation or something, they'll give them a little bit of unemployment. The work constitutes a risk to health or safety. That doesn't mean that the job in and of itself, it means there's something about this employee that they can't do the job safely. For example, if you had an x-ray tech who became pregnant and just couldn't do the job because of the health risk, and they chose to quit, they would probably get unemployment benefits in that case. Sexual harassment, any sort of unlawful discrimination, these are all things that we hate to find out about after the fact, so it's one of those that you can deal with ahead of time. And then to escape domestic violence. Sometimes that's because they have to relocate or change jobs or have to be gone for some period of time and aren't entitled to a leave, something like that. I don't see that one too often. Discharging an employee does not disqualify the claimant for receiving benefits if the discharge was not for misconduct. Okay, what that means is that if you are, put affirmatively, if you are discharged for misconduct, you can be excluded from unemployment insurance benefits. The problem is what we all define as misconduct. The EDD's view of misconduct is very different than ours. And I'll give you some strategies on that. It is something less than willful behavior, but more than negligent behavior. It has to be somewhat intentional, reckless, along those, something beyond the normal bad employee type behavior. One of the things that could constitute misconduct is repeatedly doing the same thing wrong. For some reason, and I've seen this a zillion times, if you terminate someone after 3 written warnings for 3 different things, EDD probably overrules you. If you terminate them after 3 of the same thing, they probably don't. And to me, it's still 3 things, just because you got creative and kept changing the things that you do wrong. But that's one thing that you should recognize. So if there's any way to tie the 1, 2, and 3 together with some sort of common thread, for example, if one is showing up late and the other one is inability to communicate with a coworker and the third one is theft, I would probably put the word insubordination in there on all of them. Here's the policy on attendance. We told you and you were insubordinate. You refused to follow it. Told you to deal better with your coworkers and you were insubordinate. You know, try to work those common phrases in there so it looks like the 3 are related. Misconduct has some or all of the following. The claimant owes a material duty to the employer under the contract of employment. Hardly anyone has a contract of employment. This is sort of old school from the EDD. And I would say most employees owe you a duty. So we'll figure that we can get that one. There is a substantial breach of that duty. There is a difference in the eyes of the EDD. There's a difference between talking on your cell phone while you're getting paid and running a side business, internet business on the computer, on your employer's computer. To me, in both cases, the person is not giving you, Myrna, their seats back here. In both cases, you're not getting your money's worth. But in one, they say, well, it's just an employee talking on the phone. The other, it's a little more substantial. They're doing something affirmatively on that time. I don't see the difference, but they do. So one would be a substantial breach, and one would be sort of just being a bad employee. Breach is willful or wanton disregard of that duty. Wanton disregard generally means they knew what they were doing was wrong, they had the ability to conform, and they chose not to. That goes back to simple things like making sure you have a policy, making sure somebody signed for that policy, making sure you brought it up to them or attached it to the counseling memo. And the breach disregards the employer's interests and injures or tends to injure the employer's interests. Basically, theft of wages, theft of property, destruction of property, loss of clients or customers, very low productivity that was preventable. Those are the type of things. You want to show some sort of injury when you're filling out the EDD claim. Some generally considered behaviors that are misconduct, theft. And we have seen people who have stolen get unemployment benefits. And there's a handful of different reasons. One is the employer couldn't prove it. You know, there was a possibility, albeit slim, there was a possibility that somebody else could have done it. That comes in like common cash, or if you have unsecured things of value. If another employee leaves their purse sitting on their chair. If there's any opportunity that somebody else did it, then the EDD is going to not disqualify that person from benefits. If you can get an admission, that's very helpful when you're terminating somebody. Sometimes you can, most of the times you can't. So I would have policies where we can say, no, we had dual control or double custody, this was locked, these people had the key, these two people weren't there that day. You want to be able to demonstrate that there's no opportunity for someone else to have done it. Willfully or negligently damaging company equipment. That doesn't mean stepping on your safety glasses. It probably doesn't mean dumping the iced tea on the keyboard, which I've done twice. And one was one of those Snapples and it was sticky. Just throw it in the garbage. There's nothing you can do about it. That's not the type of negligence. Ducking out while the machine's running to grab a quick smoke when it's not your break, or you didn't have someone cover, or you didn't, and to destroy something, that's probably going to meet the standard. And then certainly willfully damaging, but take note, I had an employee that didn't return a cell phone. He was still employed, but we wanted him to come in because we were going to terminate him. But we wanted him to come in because we wanted to get his stuff back, his phone and his keys. And his wife ran in from the car, put his phone on the front desk. It was like an auto parts thing, smashed it with a hammer, and ran out. And we said, aha, destruction of property, blah, blah, blah. EDD ruled in his favor because he wasn't the one that did it. His wife had smashed it. Even though he was driving the car and handed her the phone and noticed she was walking into the office with a hammer, I would have disqualified him for just having an idiot for a wife. Engaging in altercations with supervisors, other employees, customers, clients, other companies. The issue on that one always comes down to who started it. The employees always claim, I was just standing there. So be prepared, not just the fact that you terminated someone for fighting, be prepared at a hearing to be able to demonstrate that this employee had a choice of not fighting. They had the opportunity to walk away. Whether or not they started, even if they didn't start it, if they had an opportunity to diffuse it or walk away but refused to, then to me that's a violation of a fighting policy. Yes?
In the case of a construction company, we had an employee in one day repeatedly disregards safety warnings.
Okay.
Terminated.
An employee who repeatedly ignores safety
The way moving equipment.
procedures in the same day and terminated them.
Yeah.
I would say after the first or the second one, that employee would have been suspended. I'm not sure I'd let them stay if they kept repeatedly all day. I'd say that's probably the supervisor's fault for letting them stay out there to some degree. Because what the EDD will say in that instance, I can just hear them saying it even though it's just moronic. What they'll say is that, well, by allowing that employee to do it the first 9 times, it must not have been that serious. And so we want to demonstrate seriousness through consistency of policies. If you had a no tolerance policy for safety violations and let that person do it over and over, they're going to discount the existence of the safety policy. They want to see you enforce it. Okay, not misconduct. Inefficiency, being a poor employee, overselling yourself in the interview and not being able to come through. None of that is misconduct, according to the EDD. Failure to meet performance standards as a result of inability or incapacity, same thing. I tell you that I can weld and I come in and I can't weld. They'll say, no, that's a subjective. We don't really know if they can weld. Maybe it's not up to your standards, but that's not enough to lose unemployment benefits. There was just a disagreement on expectations. So if it involves a specific skill, I would require as part of the hiring process, this goes back to the hiring, that if you're hiring a welder, I want to see the training. I want to see the welding certificates. I want to see, maybe have a pre-employment test where we can say, no, wait a minute, it's not true. They were able to do exactly what we needed during the hiring process. The fact that they can't do it now doesn't mean they can't, it means they won't, okay? Don't go by somebody's word what they can do. Be very specific in job expectations on the front end. For example, if you have a productivity measurement, letting someone go because they're not productive enough, you're never going to win that. If, however, you hire someone and the expectation is that they sell 3 vehicles a month, they've been in the industry for 10 years, and you say, we have a 1-month grace period and then you got to sell 3 vehicles a month and they don't do it, you might be able to win that one. If in fact they've signed off saying, yes, I can meet these expectations. Now there'll be other exceptions like, well, I never got to go out on the floor or whatever it is, but you want to be able to get around that one. Inadvertence or ordinary negligence in isolated incidents. Now to me, isolated incidents means that you have incidences that rarely occur. EDD takes the position without stating it this way. Isolated incidents, if the behavior is different, are still isolated, and that's what I mentioned before. Well, they only did this one time. They only did that one time, so that's isolated. But yeah, but they do something every week. So once again, try to pull those together. Good faith errors in judgment or discretion. Bar's pretty low on this one. There are very few things that I have seen the EDD rule was anything other than a good faith error in judgment. We want to be able to demonstrate, and I'm going to say this over and over again, the employee knew what to do, had the ability to do it, either through training or because they've done it in the past, because it's simple to do, and the employee made a conscious decision to do something different. And the something different might not have been break the equipment. The something different might have been wearing headphones, an earbud, violating our policy so that they didn't hear the little buzzer go off when the machine was overheating. Okay? So sometimes you have to work your way back in disputing one of these on what was the policy that was violated. Yes, we don't have a policy that says you can't blow up the equipment. However, we do have a policy that says you can't wear earbuds with music because risk of injury for not hearing alarm bells, risk of injury because someone could come up behind you. I mean, those are the type of things that we want to tie that policy together. Yes, it was just an earbud policy, but it was there for this particular reason, and we spelled that out in the policy. Okay? Dress code, that happens too. Someone gets injured because of something. Well, it was an accident. Well, no, it wasn't an accident. They were wearing a baggy hoodie, which is a violation of both the dress code and our safety policy because it causes this type of accident. That's exactly why we had that in there. So look at your policies and see how they tie together. Any questions so far? Claimant's initial eligibility is based on the reason his or her employment ended with the last employer. Okay, that's for the initial. It may be based on earnings from one employer, several employers, the base period employers. Said that's generally a 12-month look back. And all base period employers may have their reserve accounts charged. This first bullet, when you read it that way on the EDD, to me, I read it as you only look at the last employer for whether they're eligible or not. But like I said, I've seen them rule differently when we've disputed it. So how to control costs? You got a good yes, Sylvia.
So what if the last person they work with, they're eligible for it, and they want a doctor account for half of it because half of the time work, but it was a no-call no-show for 3 days with yours?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll get that notice saying your account's being charged for this person. You look back, no call, no show, and that person was ineligible. Now, just saying no call, no show, the only time we've won is when we had something back, a piece of paper from the EDD saying this person is not eligible for benefits. Send that in and say, we don't, just because they went to work for a week somewhere else and now they're eligible, we shouldn't own that. And so like I said, I have not gotten a consistent answer on that. I haven't spent a whole time looking for it, but as a matter of course, when we get those notices after the fact, I'm recommending send in that notice of disqualification saying, you can go back to someone else, but not our account. Provide employees with copies of company policies and make sure they sign them. We lost a motion to compel arbitration in the last couple of weeks because the policy was changed at some point, just a little bit, but the employer didn't go back and get signatures. So we couldn't prove that the employee had signed that arbitration agreement, that they had agreed to that, because there was no signature. So if you're going to rely on a policy for disqualifying someone from benefits, you better be able to prove that they had that. If you're going to counsel someone on something like punctuality, attendance issues, I would photocopy that policy from the handbook and I would staple it to the write-up and have them initial that they received it again. Because that's where we get that knew what it was, ability to conform, chose not to. Permit leaves of absence when possible. That's sort of out of left field. What I have found is if you jam somebody who wants time off, even if we don't think they're eligible for anything, if they have no other choice but to quit or we terminate them, they're going to find some reason to get unemployment benefits. I had X medical issue and no one, and my employer wouldn't accommodate me, something along those lines. Suspensions, leaves of absence, rather than a termination, sometimes what happens is if there's someone you're going to terminate, but they give you a note from their doctor putting them out. I always have employers tell me, well, we've got this great documentation, let's go ahead and terminate them anyway. Sometimes we might want to say, you know what, they have this long-term leave, probably not going to come back. If they do, we can do the discipline when they come back, but they're just hanging around out there. They can't go get unemployment because they haven't been terminated. They want to be terminated so they can get unemployment. Sometimes just go along with the flow, put them on inactive status and leave them out there forever. They finally quit or they get a job and they move on. So that's a strategic way of potentially dealing with someone, especially let's say it's somebody that you think doesn't meet the wanton disregard or reckless standard, and we don't want them to get unemployment. I said, don't terminate them. Let them stay out. Document leaves that are granted, the period of time, and any extensions of the leave. This happens quite a bit. Someone goes on, someone brings in a note, their doctor puts them out, no one really defines it, they're out on disability, they're going to be gone a month, 2 months, whatever. They don't come back. About 5 months later, we figure that they're gone. Hey, can we fire this person? Yeah, they haven't been here in 5 months. 3 months ago, no call, no show, they're gone. Person files an unemployment claim. It says, I was on a leave. I provided an extension, the doctor's note. My employer terminated me. And we go back and we don't see that there's a note, and we find out they gave it to their supervisor. Supervisor said, okay, and they're not here anyway, throws it in their drawer. And that person now is eligible for unemployment benefits when there's no reason for them to be. So we really want to document leaves of absence. If someone no calls and no shows after a 2-month leave, there better be a letter going out to them saying, hey, you were on approved leave through May 1st. We haven't heard from you. If you don't call us in the next 48 hours, we're going to assume you've abandoned your employment. We want that there so that they can't come back later and say, well, I gave them a doctor's note. Really, then why didn't you call us when you got this letter 2 days after you should have been back? Okay, so that's really important. When you deny a leave of absence, be very clear on why you're denying it. If somebody quits and says, I see this a lot of times, requested medical leave and it was denied. Employer wouldn't let me have it. Well, they'd been there 2 weeks and applied for FMLA leave from an employer that has 20 employees. They're not eligible. We want the termination notice or something going to them after they quit saying, it is our understanding you have quit your employment. This will reiterate your request for an FMLA leave was denied because A, you don't meet the eligibility requirements, and B, we're not a covered employer. Okay, so put that in there so it ties that together with them quitting. If not, EDD just says, well, that's ridiculous. Medical leave, they couldn't help it. Well, they could help it. They asked for something they weren't entitled to, and then they quit when we legally denied it. Okay, turnover. If you can keep turnover down, obviously you've got fewer people out there claiming benefits. Turnover is a direct result of generally of either poor hiring, which, I mean, that's sort of an amorphous term. Poor hiring means we hired the wrong person for a particular job. Either there was a disconnect between what they thought they were doing and what we thought they were doing. We didn't do a sufficient background check, and the person that was applying didn't meet the requirements, but we were so happy to have a warm body that said that they could do it that we put them in there. Or if you have high turnover in a particular area, I would say you've got a problem with supervision in that area. And these are things that they're all different by company. But if you look back, has anyone here looked back 2 or 3 years, look at all the claims where the people were eligible and figure out why. Lots of times you'll start seeing a pattern. It's a bunch of people who got benefits were in this particular department or this particular group. This group has higher turnover than everybody else. Solve the turnover problem, your unemployment insurance costs come down. Talked about conducting and documenting exit interviews. If I were fired or quit or angry, I wouldn't come in and do an exit interview. So that's always the problem. How do you get the employees to do it? I don't care if the employee refuses an exit interview. We can still document and send to them our summary of what transpired. Okay, so if someone just quits and we say, will you come in for an exit interview? And they say, up yours. Not going to, and no, you can't have your phone back. I want a letter going out to them saying, on such and such a date, you said you quit, you didn't give us a reason why, we asked you to participate in an exit interview, there might have been an opportunity to resolve whatever issues you had, you said up yours and you can't have your phone back. Okay, send that out. That's almost better than an exit interview, because with an exit interview, they get their side in. If they won't participate, then they're going to have a hard time going in and saying, I was justified quitting because my boss was picking on me, but they weren't willing to tell us that so that we could resolve it. Okay? So I guess I would change it from exit interview to send an exit notice in addition to a separation notice, or thinking just because you get a resignation from them, an email, I quit, I wouldn't leave it at that and think you've got it won. I would push it and try to get more information. At least what we want to do is have them not respond, so later we can say they made this up later. They had plenty of opportunities to tell us that they were being harassed, and they never did. They quit. Provide copies of appropriate employment records to the EDD. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but has anyone heard of the new unemployment integrity statutes? They took effect in October. And it's a federal mandate, and the states are individually passing these unemployment integrity statutes. Basically, what they're trying to do is, and I think this is hysterical, they're trying to keep state unemployment insurance expenses down. So instead of getting all new administrative law judges who will rule according to the law, what they're doing is putting the burden on the employer. They're saying these expenses are too high right now because employers are letting people get unemployment by not providing us the information we need. Isn't that ridiculous? That's the approach. It's not because we're ignoring everything the employer says. It's because the employers are not giving them the right information. So basically what variation of these, most of them have in them, is that if you do not respond to the first notice of a claim and provide a bunch of documents, you are not allowed to appeal the ruling, and you could be fined for it. And we'll send out something when we've got the regulations. We'll send that out so you can see exactly what it is. But what that means is that sort of that strategic, I've always said, don't talk to those people on the phone because they'll misstate it and then they'll hose you later. Well, now we're going to have to think about that. Now we're going to have to probably be a little more organized and comprehensive up front when trying to fight a claim. Did you have a question, Myrna?
No,
No?
doesn't matter what you give the judges.
Well, now it doesn't matter, but you got to give it earlier. So, promptly answer claim notices accurately and in detail. One of the things that I would not do, and I see this a lot, you get an unemployment notice and the employer righteously indignant emails or sends back a 4-page single-space explanation of this whole thing and brings in everything, tries to dispute everything the employee's ever said. All that does is it provides more information for them to find a reason to give the person unemployment benefits. What I would rather that you do is provide the information, just the information that we feel prevents them, disqualifies them for unemployment benefits. There's no point in talking about something that they did that wouldn't have disqualified them. You know, oh, and they chewed gum all the time. You know, that's irrelevant. Focus on they knew it, here's the policy, we counseled them 3 or 4 times, here's all the write-ups, and here's the closing, the exit letter we sent them after they quit or resigned. Okay? Give them all that, but don't assume just because you write well and you are morally right that you're going to win. They won't change it just because they feel sorry for you. And they won't change it because you're righteously indignant. They're going to change it based on the legal requirements. Answer the department interviewer's questions with detailed responses, ... and follow up in writing. I would say about half the time you get misquoted when you talk to them on the phone. So, a couple things you can do. Have someone there with you that you can then take to the hearing. Confirm in writing. We just spoke on the phone. I just want to confirm in writing, these are the questions you asked, and these are the 3 things that I told you. When you go to an bless you. If you make it to an unemployment appeal hearing, make sure that that's in the file. Because for some reason, the follow-up faxes don't make it into the file. That's the whole point of you getting there 15 minutes early so that you can look at the file and make sure it's in there. And one of the things to look at also is they give you a big stack of stuff, and there's this one printout, and it's their internal log. Has anyone ever seen that? The log of activity. And it's single spaced, and there's all these things, and most of them don't mean anything. But it's where they input what they say you told them on the phone. Sometimes I look at these and think, I don't even think you're talking to the same company, much less the same person. They type in crazy stuff. Well, I want to make sure that we actually said that, and if we didn't, I want to make sure that that document, that follow-up document is in there. If not, you're stuck with what they have as the phone input. And bring a copy with you of what you sent that shows the proper address. There's a code section that in the labor code, I think, it's in the Code of Civil Procedure, that says mail is presumed to have arrived if sent to the proper address. So them saying, well, we didn't get it, is not a very good excuse. So those are the little things that we want to be careful with. Don't assume just because you say it that they will write that down. Appeal the decision if you believe it's contrary to fact or to law. Not because you disagree with it. Be familiar and look at the reason why they gave someone benefits, because that's what you want to appeal. If they say employee was granted benefits or not disqualified from benefits because they had a legitimate reason for quitting, that's the ruling. That's what we want to dispute. We want to dispute that they did not have a legitimate reason, and that's what you want to be prepared for. Going back, how do we do that? Well, if we have the closing memo where we told them to, we wanted to talk to them about it and they ignored us. If they quit on the day we were going to terminate them or suspend them for their 9 documented violations of the same policy, that's not a legitimate reason for quitting. Okay? Don't go in, what's the old saying, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. If you're going in trying to say this is a bad person and they're saying they had a legitimate reason for quitting because they had medical issues, it's irrelevant. You're going to lose that one. Okay? This one is coming up a lot. They are ruling against employers because the person that initiated the primary fact is not there to testify. In the past, we could say 2 employees told us they saw this other employee reach into the register and take $20. You don't win on that anymore. What they're saying is that, well, wait a minute. What if those 2 employees took the 20, took 10 each, and blamed it on this person? You got to bring them in so we can ask them questions. Now, we don't like bringing in employees to testify. Sometimes they don't want to testify. They want to testify against other employees. That is an obstacle that you have to get around. We lost one because this one, the client lost about 4 months ago. They had gotten a call from one of their customers. And the customer said, I saw one of your trucks that has big name emblazoned on the side, got the license number and the truck number. I saw them go on the shoulder to go around a traffic slowdown, and when someone was honked at them, they flipped off the whole row of cars, including me. Okay, we got it. We had GPS. We put the person at that intersection at that particular time. It came in, terminated them, and the employee put in their thing, in their appeal that I should have been given another chance. Okay? No brainer. We go in, employee says, wasn't me. I didn't do it. Person's lying. Well, we don't have the customer in there. Customer doesn't want to come in and testify, or else we didn't want to call the customer and drag them in. And so I asked the guy, well, why should you be given another warning, a second chance, if you didn't do it? Your response should have been, I didn't do it, not I should be given another chance. And you could tell this guy was lying. Judge didn't care. She ruled that because we didn't have any more firsthand knowledge that he had done this than the judge did. And so if it means dragging a customer in, you might have to drag a customer in. And we've never had to do that in the past, but here's what I would say to that customer. We're all in the same boat. You know, if it was your employee who I had told you about, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it, but I would. I'd go in and I'd take the time, because we're all in this together, and we need to preserve the ability to disqualify people through testimony. And so bring those people in. That's probably the number one reason people are losing right now.
I was just going to say, so then it's kind of a no-brainer when you're saying it, that's the supervisor who is initiating all the disciplinary action and everything, and it gets down to termination. When HR shows up there, that supervisor goes, because I've been places where the supervisors are extremely reluctant to where, you know.
Well, not only reluctant to, they're horrible witnesses. And oftentimes they're horrible witnesses because half the stuff in there they didn't document. They don't remember dates, they don't remember times. And this goes back, I always bag on the frontline supervisors. I think they're the root of all evil. But it's our fault. We don't hold them accountable. You know, oh, they don't like doing reviews. We never get the write-ups from the field. We don't train them. So we don't hold them accountable. We don't call them on it. And then we give them what they want. What is it that they want? They want to come in. They want to say, oh, this person's horrible. I've written them up 50 times, and let's terminate them. Okay, we terminate them. And now we go in and we lose the unemployment because they don't have their ducks in a row. Who gets blamed? Who always gets blamed for losing EDD hearings? HR and me. I get blamed for it all the time. Sandra.
We recently lost an appeal where we had an employee, he was suspended, and he came back that evening and he beat up his foreman. He did this in the parking lot, he waited for him in the parking lot. We had witnesses, the foreman filed a police report, filed a restraining order, and when we finally got down to the ED hearing, obviously the victim didn't show up, but we took the police report with us, and the judge threw it out saying that he couldn't prove that was the person who got beat up, filed the report.
Because we didn't have the victim there
Yeah,
testifying.
And our former employee said it wasn't him. So they threw out a police report and they awarded him that.
Perfect example of the idiocy of the system. That's one, I mean, and maybe we all have to start doing this. That's one where you get your state senator or rep on the phone and say, look at this. Look at this. If that guy who beats up the foreman and we do everything right still gets unemployment benefits, we can't win. So that's one I would escalate that one. That makes me sick.
To go along with the victim who's going, can you just get an employee statement for him? Would that
No.
be enough?
Statements don't work anymore either. Say, well, anyone could have written that. They have to have the ability to ask them questions. I as the judge, have to have the ability to ask them questions. Now, sometimes you have to make the decision that, well, we don't want to drag that victim in there in front of the, that's one where you might have to just say, fine, they get unemployment, we got bigger fish to fry. But yeah, to the extent you can, you better bring a warm body, and they better have their ducks in a row. So.
But statements held before the hearing.
Statements before as evidence that you can submit,
When you are
sure.
filing the claim and you send the statements there.
Yes. When you provide the written response to the initial claim, statements might sway one way or the other, but if it gets to a hearing, a whole different beast. What time is it? Okay. and I don't have a summary slide, but in my perfect world, this is the way that if I was hired to get a large company's unemployment down, here are all the things that I would do if it were important enough to the company. I would look immediately at turnover and retention. Where's it coming from, and why are these people leaving? I would look back a little bit further once I figured that out and say, where did these people come from? The people that leave, who hired them? What's the if it's because, if we have a whole bunch of people that we got rid of because they weren't performing their job well, we've got a disconnect in the hiring. The person hiring doesn't know what they're doing, or the job description doesn't match. There is a very specific reason for you keep hiring people who can't do that particular job. That's a fixable problem. I would reiterate to both those above me and those below me that I cannot keep unemployment costs down if I don't have the documents and the steps taken before we get to the point of terminating somebody. If I have to demonstrate that they were given a copy of a policy and they were aware of it, you better have it up to date. It better be signed by the employee before we terminated them. You better give me the ability to show that they had the opportunity to change. We have a written warning. And here's a little trick. In all the write-ups that you do from this day forward, have the supervisors put in there, I am giving you this copy of the policy so that you have the opportunity to change your behavior. That's right out of what the EDD is looking for. Put it right in the write-up. I am attaching it so that you can change your behavior. Because if you do not change your behavior, and you do it again, you will lose your job. Okay? Let's just use their words against them. Right in the write-up. Not check the box, insubordination, box checked. Second, final, double secret written warning followed by 2 oral ones. Check the box. Sign it. It's not going to work anymore. So go back and look at the write-ups. I would suspect if you've got 10 supervisors, you've got a spectrum of 10 different ways that people are disciplined, encouraged to improve, whatever you want to call it. I would make sure that those are done uniformly in a way that you want. If it's a form, maybe it's a combination of checking boxes and then mandatory filling in things. There's nothing that says a frontline supervisor has to do the write-up. Maybe if they want to do the write-up, they have to come to HR and you do it together. So you can ask them the right questions. That becomes the write-up. Supervisors aren't trained to do it, they don't want to do it, and they don't do it right. But we rely on them for everything. So just have them come in, have a process, spend the time. You know, what you might say is we could spend all kinds of time doing this. Yeah, you could. Maybe you don't want to, but at least make a conscious decision. Don't put the onus on HR or whoever's responsible to get costs down without willing to change the structure that allows it to happen. Okay? So I would look at the hiring, look at the process for writing people up, and then I would be very good about documenting when someone leaves. Okay? Once again, just because they send an email saying, I resigned, you are not in the clear. Put the other stuff in there, send it to them, send it by certified and regular mail. Anytime you send something by certified, send it by regular mail also. Because then you get to the hearing and the employee says, I didn't get it. I didn't sign for it and they don't have the little card. Well, Einstein, I mailed it through the regular mail too, and the chances of you not getting either of them are 0. So we want to do that too. And you don't have to put on there certified and regular. Just put certified and then photocopy the other one and copy of the stamp in the envelope. Because then they look like they're lying. Okay? So control the separation and how it was dealt with. What you want to be able to show is that if they come back with something, especially on a quit, that they're trying to justify why they quit, we want to be able to demonstrate we had no idea and no opportunity to fix it, which means it probably wasn't true. I do not believe that someone worked for someone for 5 years and had to quit because the environment was horrible and they never raised it. Not in any performance evaluations, not in the 9 times we counseled them for performance problems. They never raised it. Okay? So on the write-ups, one of the other things you can have, and it doesn't matter, we always get hung up on whether they signed it or not, have a place that you point out to them that says, do you want to add anything to this write-up? Because if they don't add anything and then later claim, well, I was getting harassed, they're going to have a tough time with that. Okay? So getting costs down is a systematic approach to hiring, managing performance, and terminating. There is no silver bullet to keep your costs down. Any questions? Yes, Sandra.
With the new integrity law, as you know, we have a lot of seasonal layoffs and sometimes they're very short term, and we're hiring them right back. So we typically do not respond to those because we don't care if they get the benefit. But are we now going to be obligated to respond to all of them?
I think so. It's not there today, but I think you're going to have to return the notice and say affirmatively whether it's accurate or not.
And what about those that are maybe terminated for like a post-investigation, maybe something really serious or confidential, or we don't respond to those because we don't want to release the declaration?
Then they're,
We just say post-investigation?
yeah, that's going to have to shake itself out. You know, to me, they're taking away or trying to take away the ability to strategically not contest unemployment benefits, either because we want to get them later, we don't want to get, you know, there's something else going on, and they don't care. I mean, it's hey, if we had information that would have excluded them, you better get it to us, because if we find out later, then we're gonna fine you.
I have one of those strategic ones that we decide.
Mm-hmm.
So the employee was supposed to put just lay off and whatever an article. Well, the employee's wife was busy about it. She put something different. They called, we didn't provide information, and then employment denied the claim anyway. So we didn't contest it.
Yeah, and they deny it anyway. Yeah, like I said, that's like lightning hitting twice in the same place. You know, you don't answer it, you don't talk to them on the phone, they deny it. You know, who knows? I wouldn't. That's a great example of the randomness. And then you've got this other one where you show that they beat someone up and they're going to jail for it, and no, we can't prove it. So, yeah, I would just do the documentation, take your chances, try to do it all right, and then really, at some point, you just have to accept the inevitable. You might have done everything right and you still lost. Don't change what you're doing if you're doing it correctly. Just chalk it up to flaw in the system, because that's what it's going to be no matter what you do. Okay? Well, thank you all very much for coming. We love having you come to our Lunch and Learns. And if there are topics that you desperately want to hear about, let us know, because we are happy to put a program together if we don't already have one. Thank you.